We've legalised medicinal cannabis, but is it time to legalise the recreational stuff?
Every year, 2 million Australians illegally use marijuana. About 80,000 of them get arrested, but there's little or no effect on supply and demand of the drug.
Against any criteria, we've failed. Mountain of evidence, really, of the fact that we can't arrest and police our way out of this situation. The only way to win the war against drugs is to declare peace. The sole reason for the huge criminal marketplace is prohibition.
And it's estimated that illegal market has a bigger annual turnover than our wine industry. So if we can't stop it, should we legalise it and tax it?
Legalising cannabis would provide us with an opportunity to regulate the drug, have warning labels on packets, provide help-seeking information, and also product consumer information.
This is already happening in other countries. Uruguay was first in 2013. Canada's set to follow on July 1, and 8 US states have legal cannabis markets.
Colorado is using revenue from cannabis taxation to rebuild its public schools. California is trying to improve areas of the state that were damaged by the war on drugs. So there's a lot we can do with the revenue.
Alcohol kills about 6,000 Australians each year, while tobacco kills 15,500. Both are far more harmful drugs than cannabis, yet they are legal, regulated and taxed.
The decision to criminalise cannabis, made 90 years ago, was basically a historical accident. It was a mistake. And the experiment to proceed has been very costly, very damaging to young people.
And Dr. Wodak says there's no good reason why cannabis shouldn't be regulated in a similar way to alcohol and tobacco.
Young people would have to show photo identity, proof of their birth date, and if they're underage, they wouldn't get cannabis.
Joe Baxter says these arguments don't stack up.
The idea of taxing marijuana is very seductive, but it will never offset the burden that will be on our health system if marijuana is legalised with increased use. It would send a message that it's permissible and safe to use, and it would increase use, particularly among young risk takers.
But former AFP Commissioner Mick Palmer says it's time to try a different approach because prohibition simply hasn't worked.
Police focus ought to be on the high end of the drug market, high-level trafficking and importation of large quantities of drugs, but to continue wasting police resources and criminalising young people for simply using and possessing drugs serves no good or positive purpose at all.
So today the Greens have announced they will support legalising cannabis for recreational use, and Greens leader Senator Richard Di Natale joins us now to discuss the policy. Senator, why have you decided to do this?
Well, because the war on drugs is really a war on people. We've got to get real about cannabis. Nearly 7 million Australians choose to use cannabis. That choice can land them with a criminal conviction, which can impact their opportunity to get a job. They're sourcing products of unknown quality and purity. And of course, all they're doing is feeding the mega profits of criminal syndicates and criminal gangs.
Senator, how serious are you about this, or is it just a ploy to get the votes of the young people?
No, this is a very serious reform. It's happening right around the world, and it's about time we actually did something here in Australia. We've got to get real about the problem. What we do know is that at the moment, right now, many young Australians are making this choice, millions of them, and it's a choice that can land them with a criminal conviction.
Richard, I think this is a particularly destructive policy. We've got a lot of evidence in about prolonged use of marijuana and what it can do to people, particularly with psychosis. How could you really argue that you're going to make another drug that can cause more problems legal?
Well, Steve, as someone who was a drug and alcohol doctor, I've seen how damaging the tough on drugs approach is to people. We've got to take this out of the hands of criminals and dealers. We've got to make sure that it's within the hands of health professionals. We've got to have a much more tightly controlled and regulated environment. What this does is it ensures that people get access to lower risk substances of known quality and purity. It means that they're getting advice from trained professionals. The government actually licenses people to grow cannabis. Those licenses would be issued under very strict licensing conditions, and the government would ensure that there's monitoring and compliance.
The problem is that some of the evidence that's coming back from states in America where marijuana has been legalised aren't terribly encouraging. So, for example, in Colorado, it's more than doubled the number of drivers involved in fatal crashes who have tested positive for cannabis. The Children's Hospital's seen 4 times as many cannabis-intoxicated 13 to 21-year-olds turn up at ER. In Washington, there's been a spike in pot poisonings from edibles. There's a 2,000% increase in emergency room visits due to marijuana poisoning. I mean, these are not health-based outcomes. Is it really the kind of policy you want to pursue?
Well, there's a few things to say about that, Wally. Firstly is it's not just the US that has done this, but a number of other countries, Uruguay, Spain, Canada's about to do it. And there are different models. Ultimately, what we do know is that right now nearly 7 million Australians are using cannabis. The evidence linking consumption to change regulation is actually mixed, and you're picking one model compared to many other models that have been tried right around the world. And in fact, there are a number of other positive benefits. You know, as somebody who was a drug and alcohol doctor, as a parent of 2 young kids, what I'd want to make sure is that my kids get access to accurate information, to evidence, and that if they're going to make a choice, like the many millions of Australians who do it, that they're getting access to lower risk products and they're getting it from a trained professional. The people who resist this change most are criminal syndicates and gangs, because they're the ones who benefit from the status quo. We've got to smash that business model. We've got to take it out of the hands of criminals, and we've got to put it in the hands of a tightly regulated health framework.
Can I just be clear that the questions we're asking are not coming from criminal syndicates? We are just trying to explore the issue.
Are you a cannabis smoker yourself, Senator?
I have, like one of many millions of Australians that tried cannabis, and yes, I did inhale.
Right.
Right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Certainly an interesting conversation. We're going to take a break. After the break, though, a special guest. Don't go anywhere.
Coming up, it seems